Hi everybody. Hi, my name is Sherry D, and I am here today to share with you my valley fever story of when I got diagnosed, how I got diagnosed, and how I have been living in recovery for the past 6 years. And so, as you'll see going forward in my other videos that I offer, I always like to incorporate the importance of drinking water anytime we're recovering from any illness. So I drink out of a glass bottle. I enjoy these bottles. They make me smile because they do that. So cheers to you for joining me and listening to my story of how I have been diagnosed and how I am recovering from valley fever. Have a seat, have a cup of tea, sit back and join me, okay? So again, my name is Sherry D. I was diagnosed with valley fever 6 years ago, almost to the day. So within the next few days is when everything is kind of coming back, and you kind of relive things. When you have valley fever, you kind of have this anniversary date of when you were diagnosed. And I would like to open with the first 2 or 3 years that I was living with valley fever. When the anniversary date would come around, I would find myself falling into depression and just remembering the struggle that I had to live through to get into recovery. And I think it was on my 4th year that I decided to look at things in a different way, because when you're recovering from valley fever or any illness, it's best to stay positive and happy. So what I decided to do is start looking at my anniversary of being diagnosed with valley fever as a time to celebrate and be faithful and grateful that I'm here still with my loved ones. So now, rather than look at it as a sad time of year, it's a time that I choose to celebrate. So here we go with my story. I apologize, this one's going to be long, but I will do shorter excerpts in order to help anybody who might need to know what to expect when they've been diagnosed with valley fever, and or what a caretaker might need to expect for someone that they love that's been diagnosed with valley fever. So basically, for me, it started with a fever. I am a woman who rarely ever gets sick, and when I do get sick, I have a tendency of just resting and recovering, so that way I don't have to go to the doctor and get medication. I don't like taking medication. I'm a very homeopathic, natural kind of woman, and so taking medication is a struggle for me, but I've learned to embrace it now at this point in my life. So I got a fever, and that fever started on probably a Thursday or a Friday, so I rested through the weekend, stayed in bed, stayed on the couch just like this, and kept icing myself. I knew that I was right about 103 and 104 temperature, and thank you for joining me, you all. Right about 103, 104 temperature, and I knew that was not a safe number for an adult to be at, and I don't have enough courage to get into an ice cold bath, because then that would stress my body even further. So I just took ice packs and I had them on my head and on my back, and I kept monitoring my my temperature every 3 or 4 hours. If it would have gone over 104, I would have immediately gone to the emergency room, because I don't need brain damage. So I rested for a few days, and by the 3rd day of rest, I was starting to recover just a little bit, and I had to go to work. I work part-time, and I was getting up ready for work that morning, and my daughter said to me, "Mom, how do you feel?" And I said, "I feel like I should be in bed." But I didn't want to cancel on my client, so I went to work, and that day at work, I had the low-grade fever at that point, but my ankle started hurting. And so now, in retrospect, knowing when you have valley fever, it causes joint swelling. So one of the symptoms of valley fever is joint pain, and so often it's in your ankle, or some have it in their knee. And I've recently, thank you for the like, I've recently experienced some hip pain, which I'll explain later, and how I deal with those type of pains when they come on now. So I started with the ankle pain. I went home. from that job, and the fever spiked again. So by that point, this was a Thursday, Friday, and I was still trying to fight through it, and I didn't go to the doctor, though I should have then. I waited until Saturday till I really had no choice. But so I went home from work, I rested, I iced, and at that point I was putting eye drops in my eyes, so I knew already something was wrong with my eyes. But I just thought it was allergies and what have you. So I went home, I was resting, and then on Saturday I was at home, and it was kind of hot outside. I was resting on the couch, and my husband was out in the yard, and I went and I took a shower. Got out of the shower, so my body was kind of heated up. I put oil on or lotion, which I do after I shower, and I went outside. And when I went outside, by the time I walked from my house down to my driveway and back up to my house, I was breaking out in a rash. I had rashes coming in my mouth right here. I had them under every place that bends, so I had them here, I had them under here, I had them under here, I had them behind my knees. It was not pretty, and so I had already planned for my mother to come and sit with me while my husband and daughter went to work that night. And I called her and I said, Mom, forget about the graham crackers and the chicken soup. Please come here and take me to the emergency room. Something's wrong. And so, you know, I should back up a step at that point. At that point, I was already diagnosed. So before I went to the emergency room, I apologize, I'm going to back up a step. So for that week, I had already been diagnosed with pneumonia. So that's what happened. I had a fever for a week. I went to the doctor. I was so weak I could barely walk. Oh, barely walk. You're just so weak and you can hardly talk. The fatigue is unbelievable. The night sweats that come in, that was a symptom too. Now that I know, you have night sweats, you have fatigue, you have fever, and you have joint pain. And some people have weight loss, but my weight loss didn't start till 2 weeks later, and I did have a severe weight loss. I lost 25 to 30 pounds in the first 3 weeks. So I had the fever for a week. I went to the doctor, and when she walked in and she said, "Do I even know you?" I'm like, yeah. So see, I didn't get sick very often. So she listened to my symptoms. She looked at me and she said, "It sounds to me like you have pneumonia." And I said, "Well, I'm not having any phlegm. Usually when people get pneumonia, in my head, you've had bronchitis or some sort of cold, sinus infection that might set off pneumonia." Where I didn't have any phlegm, but I was having trouble breathing. And so the night before I went to the doctor, I was laying in bed, and I was laying on one side, and when I would breathe, I could feel like a flapping thing happening in my lungs, and it would flap. And so I told my husband, tomorrow when I go to the doctor, I either have pneumonia or I have lung cancer. So she said, "I think you have pneumonia." She listened to my lungs. Wasn't real like, "Oh yeah, you definitely have it," and sent me to the doctor for an x-ray. And so I wasn't coughing, but even still I knew something's wrong with me, so I wore a mask and I'm barely hobbling in. The x-ray technician took my chest x-ray and went in the back to check the films. Now I know x-ray technicians, they can't read films, so which explains what I'm going to say now. The x-ray technician comes out of the room from checking the film to make sure it can be read, and he says to me, "You only started having trouble breathing a week ago?" And I'm all, "Yes, I'm really hoping for pneumonia." And he goes, "Okay, well, you know where the door is." And so I left, but I was very concerned at that point because I could tell from the way that he reacted there was something wrong with my chest x-ray. So I went home, went to bed, and the next day I got the call, and the doctor said, "Yes, you have pneumonia. Keep taking the antibiotic that I prescribed for you." And what she had prescribed was a Z-Pak, and so I started taking that, and within 2 days I started getting little blisters on my body. I got a couple on my rib cage, I got some on my legs, and those blisters looked very similar to chicken pox. So it was a little bump, and it kind of itched, and when I would scratch it, it would pop, and there was liquid, clear liquid, and then it would dry, scabby, and then it would itch, and it would take about 3 or 4 days to heal. And so they were here, just a few. So I called the doctor, and I said, something's wrong with me. I'm getting bumps on my body. I'd like you to see them because this is not an allergic reaction. I knew it wasn't an allergic reaction. I knew what those looked like. She said, oh, just stop taking those and I'll prescribe you a stronger antibiotic. And for anybody who knows anything about fungal infections, when you take an antibiotic, it makes it flourish. For example, women who are on a prescription treatment of antibiotics, they might often be diagnosed with a yeast infection afterwards because it kills all the good flora in our bodies. So if you suffer from valley fever, pneumonia, fungal pneumonia, and they give you an antibiotic, it's likely going to make it spread and make it worse. So that's why it's really good to educate yourself and others, which is why I'm coming on and really trying to help spread awareness and tell my story. So she gave me a stronger antibiotic, and that was probably on Thursday. Friday I was worsening, and by Saturday is when those rashes, when I took that shower, walked outside, came back in the house, the rashes were horrible. I called my mother, said take me to emergency room. So we went to emergency room, and mind you, I mean, they couldn't even, you would not recognize me. I was just rash everywhere, and they were welty rashes and hot and needly, and my throat was closing up and my heart, my chest was pounding, but that could have been from anxiety. I'm not sure. So I told the doctor my story, and he sat back and he's looking at me and he says, you know, I just can't help but wonder if this is an infectious disease. I'm all, infectious disease? What's that? He says, well, pneumonia is an infectious disease. And I'm like, well, okay. So he went back and he looked at my x-ray film, because I went to the same hospital where I had them taken on purpose so he could look at them. And he comes back and he sits next to me and he says, you know, I have to tell you, he said, I've seen people with pneumonia before, but let me tell you, you have pneumonia. I have never seen someone's lungs so full. Which made me wonder, because I'm like, why am I not coughing up? Why don't I feel like I'm drowning? You know, why am I getting phlegm? I didn't, no blood, no phlegm, no anything. Which takes me back to the night before I went to the emergency room. I was getting nauseous. Before all those rashes flared up, like as I said, I was taking that stronger antibiotic, and I was worsening. I ended up vomiting, and when I vomited the night before I went to the emergency room, it was a green color, a bright green color, like this color. It wasn't yellow stomach bile thing, it was green, and it really scared me. It looked like I'd been eating grass, so I knew something was seriously wrong with me. So he said, looks like you have a very serious case of pneumonia. They gave me epinephrine to get rid of the rash that was all over, a shot of epinephrine and some Benadryl to help with the rashing as well. And so they said, and within about 20 minutes, the rashes on my face started going away, subsiding, and I was calming down. And he said to me, well, basically go home, take some Benadryl. If it gets worse, come back. So by the time they released me, it was about 10 o'clock at night. I went to the Walgreens, got some Benadryl, went home. Well, actually, I went to my mother's house, because at this point in time, I knew I was so fatigued, I was so weak, there was no way that I could take care of a home. There's no way I could make my own bed, I couldn't make my own food, and my husband had to work full-time and cover my part-time job that I have. We clean, do some commercial offices, and there was no way I could keep doing them. And so I went to my mother's so she could help take care of me. So we went to my mother's, and by midnight that night, so mind you, it was 10 o'clock when I left the hospital with the Benadryl, and by midnight they started popping up again. And where the rashes started popping up are a very common place where valley fever, people might get rashes, and I'm going to go ahead and show you here. Right here is, by the ankle, is a very common place for people to get valley fever rashes. So they started popping up on my ankle, they started popping up on my foot. And so what I did is I had a cool washcloth, and I would put it on, and it would help the rash to reside, but then it would pop up somewhere else. And so that's an important key too for people who have valley fever or know someone who's suffering, that the interesting thing about this disease, this parasite, is it moves around the body. always. It still moves around my body. And so when I got that piece of advice to know it moves around the body, it gave me peace of mind. So that way when I knew something else was popping up somewhere else, oh, this is valley fever. This is what to expect. And so, so they were popping back up, went back to the emergency room. I told my mom this is 2:30 in the morning. And so by the time I went in, I told them I'm having trouble breathing. I'm having chest pains. I need to get in now. So they got me in quickly. At that point, they gave me a steroid shot, which steroids will make valley fever or a fungal infection flourish as well. It needs to be diagnosed and treated properly. I did end up with steroids later. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So they gave me steroids and some more Benadryl, and they sent me home with a prescription for steroids and a 5-day prescription for steroids. And so I went home, and this is still when they were treating me for bacterial pneumonia. So I went home, I got I was on steroids for 5 days. I was improving slowly. I was nothing but bed rest. My eye was still kind of bugging me. And took the 5 days of steroids, started feeling a little bit better, and I had to go to work with my daughter. And I wasn't going to work, but I just sat in the office and dusted the desk that I sat while she did the rest of the work. By 3 hours into this not working, I couldn't even handle the light from the above head lighting in my eyes. I was under so much pain. So we went home, and the next day I called the eye doctor. And at that point, I was just finished with the steroid prescription. So, you know, I apologize for my timeline, but by the time my eye went in, I was already at the end of the steroids. And now I know anytime you're diagnosed with steroids, you should wean your body off. So rather than him giving me 5 days of steroids and then stop, he should have said, take it for 3 days and then take half for a day and then half for a day. So it's always best to wean your body off of steroids. Otherwise, you get other side effects and symptoms that come up that we can go into another time. But so I went to the eye doctor, and she dilated my eye and looked into it, and she said, well, you're definitely suffering from what I would call eye-itis, but I'm not sure how to treat it, so I want to send you to a specialist. I'm like, eye-itis, what is that? And she said, well, it's basically inflammation of the eye, but I'm not sure how to treat it. So I said, okay. She says, I've made an appointment for you at 2 o'clock. Go and see the specialist today. Hint number 1, if a doctor calls another doctor and's made you an appointment for right away, you know something serious. Doctors don't just make appointments for you. So I went to the 2 o'clock appointment. Well, actually, of course, I was driven to the 2 o'clock appointment because I couldn't drive at this point because I couldn't see. And my daughter, who was at the time 16 and a half, was my caretaker and my driver. And we went into the eye doctor, and I told him my story, the emergency room, the rashes, the da-da-da. And so he sits back in his seat, and he says, pneumonia, huh? And I said, yeah. And he said, has anybody checked you for valley fever? And I said, no. As a matter of fact, my husband's best friend's mother just passed away from it, and my best friend just finished nursing school. She mentioned I should be tested, but I was too sick, hadn't been tested. He said, well, I want you to go right now to the hospital and be tested. Now, I have called, they're waiting for you. Hint again, I've called, they're waiting for you. It's kind of serious. So went down to the doctor. It was very, very difficult. They draw a lot of blood when you're getting tested for the first time for valley fever, and they were training some guy, and it was slow, and I was just, finally they saw the cocci test, and she went, oh, I need to do this. So she took over. Oh, thank goodness. So they took the blood test and sent me home, and I hope to get that results of that test within 2 days. So I call in 2 days, and I said, yes, I'm calling to see if you have my valley fever test result yet. And they said, oh, no, you won't get those for 3 weeks. I'm like, 3 weeks? What am I going to do? I might die in 3 weeks. I knew how bad I was. I knew. You just know. When you're about to die, you just know. It was bad. And so so that was it. So I'm like, okay, 3 weeks. Wow. Okay. What else am I supposed to do? So the doctor, the eye doctor that said, I want you to go and get your blood tested, he said, I also want to make you an appointment with a retina specialist. And so come in tomorrow to see the retina specialist. So and this retina specialist, I'm expecting this 70-year-old man to walk in, some specialist. In walks this strapping young 35-year-old man. Awesome, awesome. Dr. Steinley, Dr. Nathaniel Steinley. He's in Bakersfield, he's in Santa Maria, he's in San Luis Obispo, Paso Robles. He is willing to talk to doctors. If your doctor needs to ask questions, just contact me and I'll put you in contact with him. So I went and saw Dr. Steinley, and he told me, before I saw Dr. Steinley, I have to back up. The health department had called me and on my cell phone right before Dr. Steinley's appointment. And I was like, hello, what's up? And they said, well, we like to talk to people who have been diagnosed with valley fever to find out their symptoms and their timeline of where they were, where they could have contracted it. And I said, well, I don't know yet. Now, mind you, this is the health department calling me, okay? I said, I'm not sure yet. My doctor tells me I'm not going to get the test results for 3 weeks. And she says, well, I have the test results right here. I said, you do? I'm probably like, you do? And she says, yeah, I do, and they're positive. And I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And she says, I don't know, you find yourself a doctor, an infectious disease doctor. I'm like, okay. So I started calling around for infectious disease doctors, found out that you have to be referred to an infectious disease doctor by your primary doctor. Now remember, my eye doctor diagnosed me, not my primary doctor, because she barely even knew me. So I called my primary doctor the next day and say, I need a referral for valley fever. And she says, what are you talking about? You only have pneumonia. So long story short, so I called my eye doctor back, and fortunately the retina specialist, he's a surgeon, so he was able to give me the referral. So basically, now looking back in retrospect, my eye doctor is the one who diagnosed me. He didn't have to wait for my blood test. He knew what was in my eyes. And I will, on my site, on the page here, Valley Fever Fungal Recovery, I'll put pictures up, and I will also do a separate little short video on valley fever in the eye after this one, so you can be on the lookout for that. And I'll show you the pictures, because my pictures are right here on my phone, so I can't show you. I'll show you the pictures so you can see what they look like, in case you wonder if you or someone else has valley fever in the eye. You can show it to your doctor to know what they're looking for. So, so he referred me to the infectious disease doctor, but the infectious disease doctor couldn't get me in for a week or two, and the doctor's like, we need to get this woman treated. She can barely sit up in a chair in this office. I'm ready to lay down in a doctor's floor. That's how bad I was. And so, like I said, because he's a surgeon, he was able to write me my prescription. And so what he did is he diagnosed fluconazole, which is diflucan. It's a very, 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 very strong drug, and it's very hard on the body. And this is what it looks like. I happen to have an old prescription from, I'm now on a new medication I'll share in a minute, but diflucan is the generic name. Fluconazole is the generic name. Diflucan is the brand name. Fluconazole is the generic name. This, if you don't have insurance, runs about $700 a month, I think. And I was prescribed 3 pills every day. So here they are, 3. They're very chalky, they're very acidic, and I would take these at night after dinner. So to make myself feel better, they look like little pink candies. I would tell myself that this was my dessert, and this is going to save my life. So rather than look at this as a horrible thing, I had to find a happy way to look at it. And I took it at night because it has a side effect of nausea and dizziness, and I didn't want to have to suffer nausea and dizziness during the day, and it was hard enough to eat already, so that's what I did. For people who have been on valley fever for a while or have a very light case of valley fever, you might only be diagnosed 400 milligrams per day. So this would be 400 milligrams per day, whereas mine was in my eye. That's part of your central nervous system. Anytime it's into your central nervous system, you should be usually diagnosed with at least 600 milligrams per day That way it's strong enough in the bloodstream to cross over into the central nervous system. Fluconazole is often taken for those who only have it in their lungs. You might be on this for anywhere from 6 months to a year. Anything less than 6 months, you're going to risk a relapse, and then maybe you might have to be on it for the rest of your life. So be sure to take it as prescribed as long as the doctor says you need it, because it's better to just keep going than if you keep going and you stop and then you come back and now you have to go forward again. It's often much more difficult. So that is what I was diagnosed. I was on this for 3 years. When you look up the side effects of fluconazole and you pair them next to chemotherapy side effects, they mirror each other almost. So basically, if you're on fluconazole, you're on a slow dose of chemotherapy every day. And so anybody who's a caretaker, or if you're taking this, you need to know that you're going to have nausea, you're going to have sore muscles, you're going to have fatigue. Some of us experience hair loss. I did. I lost almost all my hair, which is why my doctor allowed me to change my medication, which is now a harder medication to get approved by with your medical insurance, because this particular medication is $1,200 a month if you have to pay cash. So here is, you can see the size of this bottle. This is your normal-ish, but it's a big one, prescription bottle. Look at the difference in size. So this is what I take each month. This goes through my body, and so now I'm on 400 milligrams per day, which is still enough to get into my central nervous system. And so this medication is taken twice a day, in the morning and at night, every 12 hours. And here it is. So I take 2 in the morning and 2 at night. So every day, this is what's going through my body. So imagine when you get a cold, you know, an ear infection, a lung infection, and then you have to be on antibiotics. You know how yucky it is for your body and how bad you feel? Well, imagine we people with valley fever might have to take this every day for the rest of our life. So learning to live with the side effects is equally as important as living with the symptoms of valley fever. So that's just one of the important things, is to learn the side effects, read them, so that way you know that when it's happening, it's like, well, is this valley fever or is this the medication? Sometimes the side effects are worse than the disease. Sometimes people have such bad side effects with this medication that they can't even walk. I know of a young man who was diagnosed at a young age and he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. And because I knew the difference from going from this medication to this one, how it changed my life and my fatigue and pain, I knew that the medication he was on was possibly what was causing his crippling. It wasn't the valley fever. So I was fortunate enough to tell the mother my story. She got him switched on a new medication. Not sure what he's on now, but he was walking within 6 months, I think. And I think he's now without a wheelchair. So hallelujah that. So oftentimes if you're feeling crippled because of valley fever, talk to your doctor that maybe you can change your medication and see if something else works better. Side effects from fluconazole, like I said, is hair loss, and you start losing your fingernails, your lips burn so bad. I always had at least 3 or 5 chapsticks in my purse. I look like I collected them, but I always had to have something on hand. The thing that I found the best helped was coconut oil, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I use coconut oil for my whole body. When I was on this also, when I would get hot, I would feel like there was 1,000 bugs biting me, and so I couldn't handle anything over 80 degrees. If it was anything indoors or outdoors over 80 degrees, I was suffering horribly, horribly, and you could see me, and I would start just like itching, and it was bad. And you can't spend any time in the sun when you're in this medication either. You can't be there for very long. I have a bump right here, I have a fever bump on my ear. Those come and go. So yes, so fluconazole is very difficult on the body. You only have to take it with water. What I'm on now is itraconazole. This drug has to be taken with an acidic base. One doctor had recommended Coca-Cola for a friend of mine, and she's like, I'm like, oh, that's sugar. It's acid, but it's sugar. And so she switched to orange juice, and I did try that when I first was taking this, but I try to keep such a heavy control on my sugar intake that I chose just to eat an orange, or I'll do a cup of coffee or lemon water. So the acidic base is not in here, which I think is why this is so acidic. It causes the hair loss and whatnot. So with this, as you can see, I have really thick hair now. It's been 3 years I've been on this medication. This medication side effect, it may cause leg swelling. Well, no, I got body swelling. So within a few weeks of being on this medication, I started swelling and suffering from edema very badly, and that's very dangerous, because if you're all swollen, then you're going to put pressure on your heart, and then you can have a heart attack. So that's another side effect of this one, is possible heart attack. So I keep a very strict watch on my sodium. I try to keep that under 1,500 milligrams a day, and you have to watch your sauces and your condiments, and eating out is almost out of the picture. So it's just real important to get healthy first, and then after you get healthy, you can kind of sneak in things, you know, once in a while. You can still splurge on those foods, but just not all the time. You can't. So that's what the medication. My eye doctor diagnosed me. I went in, so I got onto the medication. Then I went in to my valley fever, my infectious disease doctor. And this is what he said to me. He said, well, I have good news and I have bad news. And I'm just like, okay, just give it to me. He said, the good news is what you have is treatable. He said, the bad news is you're probably on drug therapy for life, because the eyes are part of your central nervous system. When the coccidioidomycosis makes it into the nervous system, it can only suppress it. It cannot eradicate it. And it's only suppressing it as long as you're taking it. So once you stop taking it, then it can start to awaken again. And so those of us with it in our central nervous system are pretty much on drug therapy for life. There are some people who are without it, but it's very risky. And I've already tried that. We'll talk about that at another time, and it didn't work for me. I have valley fever so much throughout my soft tissue and my skin and within my central nervous system that it just continues to wreak havoc on me if I'm not medicated. So so the good news, bad news, he said, and because it is in your eye, we want to make sure that it hasn't really gone to your brain. But I'll tell you what, I can tell you it's right here, because when I was first infected, I had my eye hurt, and my head would hurt so bad. That's why I started ice bagging myself, because it hurt. It just, so I know I have a portion of it right here. He said I need to get a lumbar puncture, a spinal tap. I think he called it a spinal tap. I'm like, well, what is that? I know you're talking about my spine, and I'm not liking this. And he said, well, it's a lumbar puncture. And I said, oh, and that's where they stick a needle into your spinal cord, and they withdraw the spinal fluid to test it. So I was not happy about that. That gave me a little bit of anxiety, but hey, got to do what you got to do. So I went home, and I got out of the car, and my mom met me, and I fell into tears. I have to have a spinal tap, and I have to be on medication forever. But, you know, we'll get through it. Mom says we'll get through it, so we'll get through it. So I waited to study about a spinal tap until the day of the procedure. Right before the procedure, I Googled it and found out that when you have a spinal tap, sometimes they might hit a nerve and it'll feel like electricity down your leg. Sometimes when you have a spinal tap, when they pull the needle out, normally the blood will coagulate and plug that hole, but sometimes that doesn't happen, and so the spinal fluid will leak out, and so you start having headaches, and you have to go in for what's called a blood patch. And that's where they take blood out of your arm, put it into a syringe, and inject it into your spinal cord, so that way it'll plug those holes, and you'll stop leaking, and your life will be saved. So I knew all this going into it. Normally when you have a spinal tap, they'll have you bend over and, you know, bend your back, so that way your spine opens up and they can put the needle in. Well, this new technician put me on an x-ray table, kind of looked at me, made some marks, kept me flat, but I asked her, can you put a pillow under my belly to at least open me up a little bit? So we did. And then she put me on a table that did this. And so I'm like, oh, it's a Disneyland ride, you know, trying to find fun, make light of the situation. And so she's trying to get the spinal fluid out, and she's like, I don't like those sounds when you got a needle in my back. So she said it wasn't draining, it wasn't coming into the syringe thing or their vial, and so she had to take it out and poke me again. So long story short, she ended up poking me 4 or 5 times and finally got the vials, sent me out to recovery, because when you have that done, they will make you lay flat for at least 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, so the body will hopefully plug that hole, and then they send you on your way. Sent me on my way. I laid flat all night long, trying to do the right thing. The next day, got up because I had an appointment, and I could not even walk without this excruciating pain. Called my infectious disease doctor. He wasn't available. Had to suffer through it. Finally went in the next day for a blood patch, and within 20 to 30 minutes, they let me walk out, and I was not having that headache anymore. So that is my diagnosis. That's how I got diagnosed. I've been on, you know, medication ever since. And so basically what to expect into recovery is having a good, clean diet, avoiding sugar, processed foods, alcohol, stress. Stress is very important to avoid, and I know it's hard. If you're the major caretaker, breadwinner in your family, it's hard to avoid stress when you have this disease. But the most important part of your recovery is a good support system. And I was very blessed. I had my mother and my husband and my daughter to help me through it. I was not able to drive for 6 months. I was in bed for 6 months. I would get up here and there. My eye was kept dilated for 6 months because of the pain of it being in my eye. And he prescribed me steroid drops. So I had 2 drops in the morning and 2 drops in the evening for about 3 months. And then I went down to 1 drop in the morning and the evening for 2 or 3 months, and then I went down to just 1 drop a day, and then now I'm as needed. So as you see that steroid drop, prednisone, I tapered off of it. That's very important because the body becomes reliant on it, and if you get rid of it right away, then the body's going to freak out, and you could just flourish and have things happen worse. So a good food, I will be offering how I approach my diet and my little menu for the week. I'll give you those tips in another video and posts here on the group page. And but superfoods are very important. Kale, sweet potato, all of your really bright colored peppers, berries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. Watermelon, I craved watermelon like crazy. It does have a lot of sugar, but it also has a lot of vitamin A and a lot of good immune system boosting vitamins in watermelon. Another thing my infectious disease doctor recommended was to go on prenatal vitamins. So I went to CVS and I got just a prenatal vitamin. I got a gel cap so that way it'd be easily more absorbed into my body. And when I started those, I did notice about a 70% increase in my energy. And so that was severe. I went from a 2-hour window of energy to about a 2 to 4 hour window of energy. And the rest of that was resting. And then when I started this medication, I went to about a 4 to 6 hour window of energy. And then 2 years later, I was about a 6 to 8 hour window. So I'm about a 6 to 8 hour window of energy now. Anything after 6 to 8 hours, I'm going to start depleting my energy bank, and I'm at risk for flare-ups. So that is about the diet. Kale, superfoods, soups are really, really good for the beginning of your diagnosis if you have a hard time eating. Any kind of broth, bone broth, soups are really, really good. Again, we do suffer from dry skin if you're on fluconazole. What I chose to move towards is coconut oil, because coconut oil has no chemicals, no parabens, you know, all those preservatives are bad. Your skin is the largest organ in your body, so you don't want to put any any toxins on it when you're trying to keep your body strong. So this is organic extra virgin coconut oil. And so basically it's not pressed, you know, you just try to get it in as natural state as possible. And this is what I use for my whole body moisturizer. So it saves me on lotion. So I keep one of these in my bathroom and I keep one in my kitchen. And so if you're suffering from dry hair, from dry hair, you can also put this on as a conditioner, leave it in for a while, and then wash it out. But currently, I do use this, you know, a couple times a month, maybe for a deep oil. But what I do just to keep my hair conditioned is I use Organic Sprout Tahitian hair oil. Organic Sprout, I know it's backwards, but at least you can kind of see what it looks like. Organic Sprout is a very good brand of hair shampoo and conditioner. So just look up Organic Sprout Tahitian shampoo or conditioner, and those are awesome. They sell them on Amazon. But this here, you just get one little squirt and you rub it and you just put it in your hair, and it helps keep it more moisturized. I put this on before I go to bed at night, and when I wake up in the morning, it's not oily or greasy or anything, and it's natural. So that's what I do with that. For face and body, there's a product. This is Hylunia.com. This is designed for cancer patients who are doing radiation, so their skin burns, which is what this does from the outside in. It burns your skin and you're all dry. So this is all natural. This has this is the moisturizer. It has turmeric in it and other wonderful ingredients. 0 scent, unscented. I love it. This comes sold as a set. So this is what I use for my face regimen. This is all I use for washing. It's a gentle face wash and conditioner. So for women, if you're looking for a great facial wash and or you need a gentle cleanser, this is what I use. It retails, it's $56 at Hylunia.com, but I buy them when they're 35% off. They have sales 3 or 4 times a year, so then it's only like $38, and this lasts me 6 months. So even women that don't have valley fever, I tell them about this, and they love this product for their face. And so that's what I use for that. Hylunia also offers a healing and restoring cream. This is unscented also. This is thicker, much thicker than your coconut oil. Your coconut oil will soak in after time, but this is a really nice thick consistency, and this helped me with the dry elbows and just the general dry skin that you can get. So you can take that with you, because it's kind of hard to take coconut oil with you, you know, places or in your bag or what have you. Okay, and then another thing that I use when you're suffering from rashes, I do Epsom salt baths. I love Dr. Teal's. This is called their Refreshing Foot Soak, but it has peppermint oil and baking soda in it. Those are both antifungals, so it smells amazing. I use about 1.5 cups of plain Epsom salt and about half a cup of this, and so it just smells good. I soak for about 20 minutes. I try not to make it too hot, but you do want to soak for about 20 minutes. And the reason why it causes swelling is because it slows down our lymph system, which so does valley fever, because our body's trying so hard. Our lymph system is struggling. So what I do now to control the edema, thank goodness, I was using compression garments and sleeping with my legs up, which is another tip. When we feel tired and our legs are swollen, if you'll just lay down and put your legs up on a wall or up on the back of the couch for 10 to 15 minutes, the fluid can rush from your legs back down into your body. But what I do now is I dry brush, and it's very, very health beneficial, and it helps the lymph system move, and just really a lot of good benefits from that. I do have a video of a dry brushing routine on my YouTube channel, Sherry D Shares. That's where this video will also be listed on Sherry D Shares, so you can share it with anybody that you might meet that needs to hear any of this information. And there will be, like I said, in the future, there will be shorter videos of each different, topic that we can talk about. I just wanted to have a base video for everybody to just kind of, here you go. This is what life is when you have valley fever now. As I mentioned that it moves around the body, just the other day I was not drinking enough water and I was cheating on sugar. And I was cheating on sugar for about a month. I would just have, like 3 cookies today, and I had a donut tomorrow. And then, I was just doing like one thing a day, but I was doing it 2 consecutively, and my body started showing signs of it. So I got a hip flare-up. So I'm gonna move this just a little bit. And so basically, right in here in my hip area, there were knots like about this big. You could feel them, and I would push and it would hurt and I could hardly walk. I actually bought a cane for myself last week. So what I do when I get these nodules in my body is I get them in my arms here. I will massage them out so that way they can kind of break up and the body can absorb them rather than it just staying there as a knot and the body has to attack it as a whole. So think of maybe like ice cubes. Like when you have an ice cube and it's just one big cube, it's really hard for it to melt. It's going to take a long time. But if you break that down into little pieces, then it can melt away and be absorbed and the body can attack it. So that's just my opinion. I don't have a doctor's opinion on that. That's just experience. So here's what I do. I have my husband, he massages me a lot. So if you can't massage yourself or don't have anybody to do it, I would recommend seeing a massage therapist that does Swedish massage, and or this kitchen tool could be your best friend. I do have another tool called a deep tissue massager that I've used, but this I'm finding much more results with because it doesn't have anything pickery or knobbly that's going to hurt the skin, and it rolls. And so basically what I do is this little area right here where I had the inflammation, and or if I have it here, you can just take this and roll it out. And if your skin is warm, it's going to accept rolling it and breaking it up a lot better than if it's cold. So that is what I do. And this, it can be used on a sore neck. It can be, because this one rolls, see? Rolls, right? So you just can do this. If this is, if you're by yourself, you can get relief. So that's my tip, is the kitchen roller. Also another thing that I have found relief. Now, when we're taking these drugs, we know that we're getting our liver tested every 3 months because they're so hard on the liver. So I shouldn't be taking Tylenol or ibuprofen because that also is hard on the liver. So what I chose in the beginning of my recovery is CBD drops. This is a cannabis. This was only available for prescription. I am in California, so I was able to get a prescription for medicinal cannabis. And I use these drops, and 1 dose is a dropper full, and so I would put this in hot water and make a tea. And so I just had to be sure that my husband didn't drink my tea because he has a class 1 license and he gets tested. But CBD oil, cannabis, is a very good option for those who choose to, who aren't being tested for their job or whatever. It's a good option for pain relief. And if you can't have that, another thing, peppermint oil is really good. You can put this in a diffuser at your home, or you can just take deep breaths, keep this in your purse or your pocket, and whenever you're feeling stressed or just feel the need a little bit of refreshment, you can take a nice whiff of that. And you can also get the the edible kinds. There are dietary, whatever it's called, food grade oils. You can make teas with them, just a couple drops of lemon tea. Oh, so delicious. Excuse me while I take a drink of our water. We want to keep hydrated. And again, I try to use as little BPA in my life and in my family as possible. Glass bottle. This is available on Amazon, and they're about $13. I like it because it has this little gel thing, so if you drop it, it might not break. I use filtered water from the grocery store, so it's like 35 cents a gallon. I don't buy bottled water bottles anymore. You know, if I have to buy it in the plastic bottle, I will, but we prefer the water bottle. So that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in. I'm about ready to close up here. What to expect. Listen to your body. If you're tired, I have found that if I'm out even at an activity, and you know, maybe it's a dinner party or an outdoor event, if I find a quiet place to go to, my husband and I, we have a minivan. I have a town and country minivan. I love it. It's not too high off the ground, so I'm not hurting my hip as I get out of the car. I always have a place, I always have a backup plan of, okay, we're going to go to that event. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do if I need to rest? That way we don't have to just go home, because maybe I can just go rest for 10 or 15 minutes to refresh and then come back to the party. So that's that. Resting, listen to your body, definitely your diet and your stress. Oh yeah, yoga. Oh, movement. When we get valley fever, it causes a lot of body pain. And I found that I had to push through. I had to help my daughter with the work that she was doing for me. I went with her. And I would just sit and keep her company, and just to take a shower was an effort. In the beginning, it was hard to even stand up in the shower. So yes, when we have valley fever, we are suffering from body pains, joint pains, and whatever, but I highly encourage and suggest us sufferers living in recovery, seeking recovery, to seek some sort of movement during the day, even if it's 5 minutes. And as you recover further in your journey, Hatha yoga is a really good thing to look up. Hatha yoga is a very gentle yoga. I took it a few years ago. It was offered free for the senior citizens by the senior citizens in our county or whatever, and I did it, and it was one of the best things. And so I'm currently, one of my goals is to get certified very soon here in yoga, and I will be offering yoga videos, and so it's going to be designed just for us. It's going to be super, super easy. You know, it's not going to be stressful. It's going to be really taking care of our joints, and that's the thing, is to take care of our joints. For example, the reason why my hip flared up last week was because I was getting to feel, thank you for the love, I was getting to feel a little bit, oh, I'm feeling so strong. I started getting, hi Rafi, thanks for joining me. I started getting like, oh, I'm just so strong, I'm going to get out of the car like the old Sherry did. Well, let me tell you how the new Sherry gets out of the car now. And I recommend it for anybody, let alone people with valley fever, because of the joint pain. Thank you for the love. When I get out of the car, so I'm driving, when I get out of the car, I literally twist my whole body like an older person, and I get both feet out of the car, put both feet on the floor at the same time, and stand up slowly. Because most of us, when we get out of the car, you open up the door, you put one foot out on the ground, and your body takes the weight on that whole foot before you put your other foot on the ground. So instead, swing your body, both feet on the floor, stand up slow. Because anytime we're putting pressure on our joints, we're running risk of a flare-up. So speaking of flare-ups, oftentimes valley fever flare-ups will go to a place that's weak in your body. So I had a previous injury, that's where it hit. I still break out in rashes on my chest when I get hot or I get stressed, so I get rashes here. I tend to get maybe some boily blisters along my jawline. I'll get them on my chin if I eat too much sugar. I get them on my nose, and they are very hard to heal. What I use to heal those blisters, anybody that you know, if you've had them, you know what I'm talking about. They look like a pimple, but they're clear, they're not white, and they are big and painful and they hurt. So what I do is I take hydrogen peroxide and a Q-tip, and I soak that Q-tip, and I place the peroxide on the affected area, and I let it bubble up and sizzle up. And then I'll take a paper towel and I'll pat it to absorb any of the oil that's left in there. And then I put coconut oil on to heal it. Because right when you put the peroxide on, it's going to get white and fizzly, and it's going to look like a big white monster on your face. But within 15 to 20 minutes, that white subsides, and then I put coconut oil on to keep it moisturized. Okay, so for the caretakers that have loved ones with valley fever, just know that they're going to be tired. They're going to be tired a lot. And the more that you understand that they're going to be tired, and the more that you can support them and offer them a place to go to rest. Like I said, sometimes it only takes 15 to 20 minutes of understanding and love and rest, and we can pop back into our activities. So, I encourage all of you to just try and get up and move 5 to 10 minutes a day in the beginning, and listen to your body. So I'm sure I have a lot more to say and a lot more to add, so I will go ahead and do this at another time. I thank you all so much for joining me, and I encourage you to share this video. This is in a public group, so you can push the share button to anybody that you need. I'm also going to take this file and upload it to my YouTube channel, which is Sherry D Shares, and you can share it that way as well. I'm always available by Facebook Messenger if you have any questions. And I thank everybody who is a part of this group and other support group pages, because we all stick together and we help each other the most. Our support system is where we get the most education and understanding, because most of our doctors don't have it. They don't understand. Oftentimes when I go to the doctor, I spend about 30 minutes educating them. In my new general doctor, because I have to keep finding a new general doctor, I spend 30 minutes educating them in valley fever, with antibiotics and steroids, and you just have to be careful. So, and like I say, all these things I've talked about here today, I will make separate, shorter YouTube videos, so they will be easy to view for those of you who need them. And just do your research. If you have a question, just ask your Google, and you will find a lot of answers out there. And the best thing to do is to talk to other people with valley fever. They've been there. A lot of our symptoms show up differently. Our rashes look different. They come up in different places. And just know that when you're first diagnosed, it could take you 2 to 6 months before you are feeling better. And it could be a year of drug therapy. So take your fungal therapy, your antifungal therapy. Speaking of which, nuts, shelled nuts. If you buy almonds, walnuts, pecans, all that, if they're already taken out of the shell, they start to build a fungus. So I no longer can eat almonds, or I will get fungal bumps popping up on my face. So just listen to your body. If you find that you're getting a reaction to something, come to these pages, ask the people, see what their experience have been, and we all just stick together and we band together, and it's nice to know that people understand. So remember, if you get the nodules, I get a lot here in my neck, just massage them, rub them, and be kind to yourself, love yourself. And if you find yourself being too stressed, find things to meditate on, find happy thoughts, find people that make you feel good. And in closing, I will share, in my first year of recovery, almost every Wednesday night, I went to the local comedy night. And I'll tell you what, when you make yourself laugh, it's a really good exercise for your lungs and your gut. So, and just being happy, just finding things to meditate and dwell on that are happy. Okay? Hang on to those that you love. Those that, if you have valley fever and you have people that take care of you, be sure to let them know how much you appreciate it. And I personally take care of my body for the people that I love. I do it for them. So, peace to y'all. I love all my valley fever survivors. Drink your water. And we'll see you again. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this helps somebody out there. We'll see you next time. Bye.